everybody, and welcome to the 59th episode of the MyMuddlings podcast. My name is Julianne and I'm your host, and I'd like to welcome you all to my podcast today. It's so lovely that you could spend some time with me. So here we are, it's another hot day. I've not put a lot of makeup on, I've put a little bit of diffuser on just so that I don't look quite so, I'm not going to find a word. But yes, so it's going to be a hot one today. It's going to be 39. We've had late 30s temperatures for quite a few days now. I'm over it. I'm really sick of it. I can't wait until autumn arrives. It's going to be a little while because February is historically very hot. So let's not talk about the weather. You might see me start to sweat profusely because I do not have a fan on or anything like that. This is obviously my craft room because you can see all the yarn behind me. This room doesn't regularly get cooled. We close the door because we only have air conditioning in the lounge room. So we generally close the craft room door, the bathroom door and the kitchen door, and just keep the cool in the bedroom and lounge room. So yeah, this room doesn't get routinely cooled, so it is just residually quite warm. So if I start to look really disgusting, I apologise. And yes, don't check your monitor, don't check your TV. I have coloured my hair again and it is now blue. So it came out really blue. You can see in my streak here, it's come out super blue. It was another colorista colour. It's the L'Oreal Colorista, and it is the turquoise colour, which is a vivid, which essentially means that it will show up on darker hair. So you might be able to see my hair is quite blue. So I'm still unsure how I feel about it. It's only supposed to last 5 to 10 washes, I believe, so it won't be here forever. Simon loves it, and my friend Emma, who also saw pictures, says that she loves it too. So yeah, I guess I just go with what other people say. I mean, I guess they get to see it a little bit more objectively than I do, so if they say it looks good, then I guess it looks good. So yeah, I guess we could get on to a bit of housekeeping, which is really only to announce again about the Whip It Good knit along that we've got going on in the Ravelry group. We are now 1 month in out of the 6, so we've got quite a few FOs popping up in there. I put one in today. So yes, if you'd like to get through your whips, come on and join us, and I will be awarding random prizes, and there will be a grand prize. So yes, if you would like to be eligible for those, just go and join the group and head into the FO thread and post your projects. So yeah, next I guess I can get on to, as I was discussing last week about potentially opening up a dialogue and you know, having bits of discussion in the podcast, just to kind of, I guess, to help you guys learn a little bit more about me, and you know, hopefully for you guys to share some you know, something that's related to what I talk about in the comments or on your own blogs or on your own podcasts. I had a comment from the lovely Michelle, who I spoke about last week, of the My So-Called Handmade Life podcast, and she has requested, because she did a whole podcast on first knits, that she said that she would be interested to hear about how I started knitting and my first knits. So here we go, Michelle. Hi, Michelle. Yeah, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about that. I know I've touched on in the past about why I started knitting. I think I talked about it in my knitting, my Fibre Arts tag video that I posted 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I spoke a little bit about it in there. So, but if you haven't seen that, I can talk about it again now. I basically started knitting. I'm not actually sure what the impetus was. I think it was more to challenge myself, because I've been a crocheter for a really long time. I think I learnt to crochet back in my teen years, something like that. And I used to make and remake blankets because I'd pull them apart and turn them into something else. I never made any garments or accessories or anything like that. It was just always some sort of blanket, chevron blanket, granny square blanket, diagonal blanket. So yeah, I was always a crocheter. I did crochet for a really long time, and then because I think I probably wanted to make myself garments, but I don't particularly like the look of crocheted garments. Plus they're quite bulky, and as I've always seen myself as a bigger girl, even though I wasn't always a big girl, but I've always had that little bit of body dysmorphia and figured that I was bigger than I actually am. Now I probably think I'm smaller than I am, but that's another story altogether. Yeah, so I never really liked the look of crochet clothing because of the bulk and not wanting to make myself look bigger. I thought if I could knit, then I could make, you know, knitted garments for myself. And also at that time, I was struggling quite severely with depression. I had a very bad depression. I hadn't yet started counselling or anything like that. Ugh, I'm sweating. I'm sorry, guys. So I picked up the knitting, and I don't know that it was necessarily as a conscious way of dealing with the depression and the ruminating thoughts that I get when I am depressed. I don't know that it was a conscious thought, but I think it was more, I always find my depression, it helps for me if I'm accomplishing something, if I'm doing something. So I think it was more that I wanted to learn something and have that bit of accomplishment, because it gives you that little, you know, that spark of, hey, you know, I am okay, I can do things, and it just helps, just that little bit to make you feel less depressed. So yeah, I don't know that, yeah, like I said, I don't know that it was conscious, but yes, so I just started this scarf, and because like I said, it was a challenge to myself, because I told myself for years and years and years that I couldn't knit, because I tried, mostly I tried in that time of fun fur yarn in the 90s, I think. When was that? Or early 2000s, sort of that sort of time. And learning to knit with fun fur is, you know, as you can imagine, not a great idea. And I struggled a lot, as you could imagine. I struggled a lot with that, and you know, my knitting looked awful, and I can't knit. I can't knit. So yes, I had told myself for years that I couldn't knit. And anyway, it was almost like at a job that I had, I decided that I was going to make blankets for an animal shelter. So I was asking for donations of yarn. If people had yarn that they didn't want or use anymore, that they could pass it on to me and I would turn it into blankets. Unfortunately, I'm incredibly bad animal lover, and I never actually got any finished blankets to the shelter. So that's a point of shame, I guess. I haven't actually thought of that for a really long time. I've literally just reminded myself, and as part of that, one of the girls who gave me a bunch of yarn gave me all her knitting needles, because she decided that she wasn't going to knit. So she gave me a bunch of straight needles. I think there was 4 or 5 sets of straight needles. And just this one night I thought, well, I've got all this yarn and I'm not making these animal blankets because I'm a very, very naughty lady. And I thought, well, what if I try knitting? And I got out my straights and I got out some yarn. It was actually leftover yarn. It wasn't what I'd been given for the animal blankets. It was leftover yarn from my patchwork crochet blanket that I have over my lounge that you would have seen in previous podcasts. That one that's just like a double crochet sort of square with borders on it. So I had some of that yarn left over, and I just cast on for, I think it was called the One Row Scarf. I never made a project page on Ravelry, or if I did, I deleted it because I cannot find it on there now. I should have another look and see if I can find the pattern and put it in the show notes, but because I haven't done that yet. So yeah, it was a one row scarf of some sort, and I cast on for it and I knit it, and I don't know whether my stitches were twisted or whether I was doing things properly, but I started and I kind of just went from there. And yeah, I just kept knitting and I'm like, hang on, I can do this. And then I thought, well, this scarf is boring. I want to do something more interesting. So as part of her question, Michelle also asked if there were any books or, you know, whatever resources I used to learn to knit. And I didn't use books. I'm still not a huge user of books. And I basically used Ravelry and YouTube, and that was how I learnt to knit. And I got the one row scarf pattern off Ravelry. So yeah, and then I went to visit a friend of ours who was a long established knitter, and I knew that she was a knitter. Anyway, she had a copy of Alana Dacos and Hannah Fettig's book, Coastal Knits. So she brought that out and let me have a look at it. And one of the patterns in that was the Rustling Leaves beret. And I was like, I need to knit this hat. So pretty much I borrowed the book. She let me borrow the book, and I went straight to Spotlight and I bought some Peyton's Bluebell, I think it was, the five ply crepe yarn in a brown, and I got some DPNs. So, you know, I'm never one to shy away from a knitting challenge. My first proper project was on DPNs and a hat. So with a lot of interesting stitches. In a way, it probably really threw me in the deep end, and because it was a patterned hat. I'm going to be putting photos in, so you may or may not have already seen. Yeah, it's a heavily patterned hat of leaves. I think it was inspired by eucalyptus leaves. So yes, I started doing that, and I had a lot of trouble with DPNs, as you can imagine, being a brand new knitter and then jumping straight onto DPNs. And I often lost DPNs and had to pick up stitches, pick up my stitches again and things like that. So that was quite an exercise in frustration, but I got that hat done and I was so proud of it. I no longer wear brown, so I don't wear that hat. I don't actually know where it is, because it actually, although it was supposed to be a beret, it came out more beanie shaped, I guess you could say. It was much more fitted on my head than a beret should be. And yeah, so I wore it for a while. I did wear it. I'll pop in a picture. That's when I had short red hair, not long after I got married. So yeah, that was my first project, and it was a hat. My first finished project. And then I went to, I wanted to do a sweater, and I had some brushed mohair and wool that I was given by the same girl who gave me the knitting needles. And so I looked for patterns. I knew how much yardage I had of that yarn, and I looked for patterns, and I found a short sleeve cardigan, like a cropped short sleeve cardigan. I thought, oh, okay, good, I'll give that a go. The mohair was a nightmare, as you can imagine. So I've gone from DPNs on my first project to a very, very fluffy mohair yarn on my second project, which is a sweater, no less, in pieces. And yeah, I got all the way to the second sleeve, and I still needed to do a button band and seam it as well, and I didn't have enough yarn. And with the nightmare that I'd already had with that mohair, and if I needed to tink back and things like that, and it was all tangled and it was matted, I just put it away, and it sat put away for probably a good 2 years, and it has since been thrown in the bin. So my first sweater project died a very slow, hibernating death. So yeah, that's that's long gone. Then I moved on to my first shawl actually was a test knit that, again, third project, you know, of a certain type, well, first project of a certain type was a test knit, and that was for Shannon Cook. It was her Onwards shawl, and I loved this test knit. I knit it out of Bentigo Woolen Mills Cameo, which was a Cameo, which was a wool and Angora blend. So I think it was 85-15 wool Angora, and it was a crepe construction. I'm not a fan really of crepe yarn, but it did have beautiful stitch definition. I still have that shawl. I still like to wear it, although the Angora does shed a lot still to this day. And so yeah, that was my first shawl, and I loved it. I still love it. I've knit that pattern once again, so that's a really nice one. My first cardigan was a Alpinia cardigan, and these were all off Ravelry. I didn't get any books or anything like that. And it was again knit out of Bendigo Woolen Mills, but it was their neon. They had like I guess you probably could call it mould rather than heather. It was like a purple with a bunch of different colours in it. And yeah, I made the Alpinia cardigan, which I think I always made it too small. I was looking back at the pictures today and it was too small. I guess being my first finished sweater, yeah, I didn't really know how to measure myself properly for making garments and things like that. So it was always a bit small, even though I was a lot lighter. I think I was probably 20 kilos lighter than I am now when I made that. So yeah, it would have been just after my wedding. So I definitely would have been a lot thinner than I am now. So that was my first cardigan, and my first sweater was another Shannon Cook pattern, which was from the same book that the Onwards shawl was in, because one from the Journey book that she did with Jane Richmond, because for testing we were all gifted a copy of the book, so which was fantastic because we got all those beautiful, beautiful patterns. So I made the Antros sweater, and I don't have any pictures of it with buttons on. I do have buttons on it now. They're big, chunky coconut shell buttons. But yeah, I don't have any pictures of me wearing it, or even pictures of the sweater with the buttons on it. So, so yeah, that was my first finished sweater. And yeah, for anything that I didn't understand, I pretty much jumped on YouTube and just looked, you know, searched what I was looking for. I probably used various websites and things like that as well. Like I think there's one called Knitting Help, and probably even Interweave Knits. I think they've got certain sort of tutorial kind of sections on there. So yeah, I'm pretty well self-taught with YouTube using patterns from Ravelry. That's about as exciting as my knitting story is. I don't think there was anything else. No, that was all my first things, and pretty much I haven't looked back. And I've never really been afraid to try anything. I'm happy just to jump in feet first for anything that's knitting. I wantonly substitute yarns. And I always have done. I've never been afraid to substitute yarns. And this is actually something that Jess from the Sweater Collective and I were talking about the other night after knit night, about the substitution of yarns and how people sometimes are either afraid to do it, or they just substitute something that's completely inappropriate and then they get upset because Jess is a designer. And then they get upset with the designer, and she was saying how frustrating that can be. And I said to her, we should start collecting all these friends of ours that have blogs and things, and just completely spam the blogosphere with articles, like blog posts on yarn substitution, just so that we can try and dispel the fear and give some tips for appropriate yarns substitutions. So that was something that I'd never been afraid of, though. I mean, if you are a beginner knitter, don't be afraid to substitute, and don't be afraid to jump in feet first, because honestly, the worst that can happen is that you just have to frog it. You still, you know, that's the thing, is like sewing, if you stuff up, you lose actual pieces of fabric that you may or may not be able to replace. But I always think for knitting, you know, it's basically just one big piece of yarn, and if it's wrong and you don't like it, just rip it out, rewind the ball and use it for something else or start again. There's no loss there, you know, like there's nothing to lose except for the time that you've spent on it. So yeah, I always advocate being completely fearless with your knitting, and yes, and that's the way I've always tried to be. So there you go, first knits. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any other discussion topics that you have that you'd like me to talk about, please do let me know and I will talk about them. I'm going to be starting, I haven't made my list yet, but I want to have a list of things that I can talk about, and maybe I'll even have a little discussion section about yarn substitutions one day, just to have that there as a resource and potentially help some people to substitute yarns in their projects. So I guess I can move on now to what I have been working on. In my Knit and Stitch Bix bag that you guys have seen probably a million times now, I have another version of my shawl prototype. Now, I showed you guys this last week, and I showed you that I had the top part done, and where is the end of my yarn? Whoops, now I've just pulled it all off the needles, so bear with me while I put it back on. Okay, now that we're back on the needles and everything is safe, I will continue. So this was the redo that I was doing of the undyed version of the shawl that I am designing. I really like it, however, I think it's a bit frou-frou for the current environment of knitting, because I'm finding that there's a lot of more textural, brioche, colour mixing shawls, where this is just going to be a straight one skein shawl. However, I am going to knit it again, I think, during testing with 2 colours. So this is pretty much all I've been working on this week. I haven't worked on my featherweight anymore, but yes, you have seen the top with the diamond motif. Went to the border, and you remember I had the diamond motif that was really large and with lots of stock in it. I actually found one that was similar, that is a smaller motif, and that is what I have substituted in, and I prefer it. Definitely I prefer it. So I actually had this nearly done. I'm doing an applied bind off, and I got sort of up here and I ran out of yarn. So I went back and took it all off and removed, because I had an extra 2 rows of garter stitch after this second border section, so I had another 2 rows in here, and I ripped those out, and hopefully it will be enough, because I was so close to the end. Hopefully it'll be enough for me to finish the edging. But basically the edging is like a garter stitch diamond motif that I am doing, so this is going to need some severe blocking. Jess has offered me her blocking mats and blocking wires for a borrow, because I don't own any. So yes, I am nearly halfway on the rebind off, and I mean, like I said, it is very frou-frou, plus I guess the colour is a little bit frou-frou with those real pops of bright colours. I'm wondering whether something, you know, in like with a grey and maybe just a tonal grey, tonal colour, you know, for a 2 colour where you could probably do the borders in a separate colour, might be less frou-frou looking, I guess, but there's a lot of lace. There is a lot of lace, or a lot of eyelets anyway in this, and that was what I wanted. I wanted diamond motifs and I wanted eyelets. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. I can't wait to see what it looks like after blocking, especially the edging. And as I was knitting this one, I've actually been writing it down line for line, so I can pretty much just copy that off into my end pattern. So yeah, that's probably all I can really say about that. It hasn't taken me a whole heap of time to knit this. It's probably been about a week, and I was aiming for this to be a 1 skein shawl, so all you would need is 1 skein of my plush sock or something, the equivalent sort of yardage, and you could make a shawl out of it. And I think with all the eyelets and the larger gauge that I have, it's going to really block out relatively large, which is good. And yeah, I'm quite enjoying this. I have put it down for the last couple of days because, like I said, I did have to rip out that whole applied edging. So I was a little bit burned out on it, so it has been sitting in timeout for a couple of days, but yeah, I do need to get back to it so I can start writing it up and potentially putting out a call for test knitters. But yes, if you were interested in test knitting this, head over to the thread on Ravelry for this episode and just put your name down there and just let me know so I can give you an ear burn when I'm ready to call for testers. And apart from a little bit of acquisition, I haven't really got anything else to show you guys today because I've been a little bit out of sorts the last couple of days. I think I've got really bad allergies or a slight cold, just giving me a little bit of, making me feel very flat, very tired. My nose has been a little bit blocked up and runny and can't decide what it wants to do. So yeah, which isn't great for a healing nose piercing, let me say. This has been quite painful a little bit from all the nose blowing, but just trying to keep it clean, try and keep it calm. But yeah, I finally started sleeping at night without a band-aid on it, and it seems to stay put during the night, so we're all set. It's nearly 4 weeks since I had it done, so we're getting there. But my acquisitions this week is pretty much back to my favourite shop, Knit and Stitch Bits on Etsy. She had this camel fabric and I absolutely loved it. And I tried for the longest time to resist. I didn't want to buy another bag, and I didn't, well, it's not that I didn't want to buy the bag, it's just I'm thinking about money things and thinking, oh, I really shouldn't spend more money. And, but this, and I was hoping that these would sell out because they're camels and they're so cool. And in the end, the bags just kept sitting there and sitting there and sitting there. And yeah, then she decided to have another sale and I'm like, sold. And this is her extra large size. So this is like a blanket bag. And the reason that I wanted to get this size bag is because my granny stripe blanket does not have a bag at this point in time. And as I am frogging one blanket into another, I have quite a bit of bulk, and I keep losing my crochet hook as well. So I thought, all right, well, I'm going to get an extra large. I mean, you can see how big it is. It's like 4 times the size of my head. An extra large project bag for my blankets. So I actually haven't opened it yet. Oh, it's got cream lining to match. And yeah, I just love the camels and I couldn't resist. I really couldn't. I think she still has the rest of them. She had 4 of them of the different sizes in her shop. So if you love this print, head over to her shop because yeah, I think she's still got her sale going. So head over and check out Knit and Stitch Bits. And Katie was super lovely and she sent me in a little extra gift of a little notions pouch. How cute is this fabric? As soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh, that's so cute, I love it. So yeah, she sent me a little notions pouch as well, which was fantastic. And they're all exactly the same, well made, lovely padding in them. And yeah, I can't wait to find a use for this because it's so cute. I love it. It's like the little clouds are crying or something, you know, they've got the rain. I like the little sleepy one, this one here, with its sleepy eyes. Super, super cute. And probably finally, until Sunday, Lovebird Lane Yarns is having a sale. So if you are in the market for some Lovebird Lane yarns, head over there. It is store-wide. You don't need a code. All you need to do is put $30 worth of product in your cart and you get an automatic 15% off. So why not? Head over, help me out, let me get some more spending money so I can make some fresh stock for Fibre Feast at the end of March. So yeah, if you're in the market for some yarn, head over there and grab your discount. And I think that's about it. I am hot. I want to go and sit in front of a fan again. I need to edit this, which is going to be having a hot laptop sitting on my lap. So yes, I hope you guys all have a fantastic week. I hope you enjoyed the discussion today, and please do let me know if there's anything else that you'd like me to talk about. And remember to subscribe and give me a thumbs up as well, just to help get the word out on YouTube about the podcast. So, and welcome to new subscribers. I've had a few new subscribers recently, so thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you continue to enjoy. So guys, have a fantastic week. Happy crafting, happy knitting, and take care of yourselves and stay cool or stay warm wherever you are in the world, and enjoy. I will see you next week. Bye.